Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I'm excited to be bringing you back another female powerhouse, Miss Jessica McClain. And today's discussion is going to be continuing our series on women in power and demystifying all of the narratives that are out there on what it means to be a powerful woman. So if you are completely new to the show and you've never heard it, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. And so I'm going to introduce her to all of you and then have her talk a little bit more about her background. So Jessica is the Chief Financial Officer at Girl Scouts National Capital, overseeing financial accounting, property, product programs, and business operations. Prior, she was in public accounting for 11 years before transitioning into the nonprofit sector. Her impressive portfolio includes serving on various national and local nonprofit boards. She has been recognized as the 2023 CPA Practice Advisor Most Powerful Woman in Accounting. Yes. And she's also a 2022 Washington Business Journal 40 under 40 honoree. And there are many, 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 many more awards that have come that I've seen over this last year that obviously we won't list them all. But with that, welcome to the show, Jessica, or welcome back to the show, Jessica.
Well, thank you so much for having me again. I'm so excited to be here today.
Same here, same here. So we will get into this power discussion, but for those who are listening who are completely new, walk us through just the high level career milestones. How did you get to this place where you are now the CFO of one of the most impactful organizations for young girls and grown women alike?
Absolutely. So I've been in my current role as the CFO for Girl Scouts Nation's Capital for about 2 years. And it's been an amazing, amazing journey. A lot of the work that I do seems more kind of in the background a bit, but I know it has an impact. And that gives me a lot of great sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. As you mentioned before, I spent 11 years in public accounting as an auditor. I'm a CPA, certified public accountant. And so I love the talk of business and financial acumen. It's something that gets me excited every day. So I did that for about 11 years until I decided I wanted to make a change, but bring my love for accounting with the passion for social impact. So I like to operate at their intersection, and it's been a great journey so far.
I love it. So in your role, I think when we talked last time, you were just there, like it was under a year, like you had not even been there a year. And, it wasn't, for those who are listening or who haven't heard the first session, it wasn't just like, oh, she decided she went from like one of the big fours into being at Girl Scouts. So talk us through, especially that transition moment and how you navigated stepping into this role.
Absolutely. So my original goal was to be a partner at an accounting firm, and that was what I was trudging along for over 11 years. My end goal was partner at an accounting firm. And at some point, I decided it wasn't for me. And a lot of people in public accounting get to that point and they realize, the partnership isn't for me. And hey, let's do something different. And I thought after working in the government space within public accounting for many years, the nonprofit space was, again, a great transition. And again, gave me that sense of fulfillment that I needed in the work that I do each day. But it was definitely a transition. I took a lot of online classes. I connected with other controllers and CFOs in the nonprofit space as well. So it took a change from just learning. Again, even though I'm a continuous learner, it's not something that I stop. I'm always looking to learn something new and improve. But also, again, the network and the people that I connected with was also part of that journey as well, which was very important. So it definitely took some time to transition. Do I feel comfortable where I am now? Absolutely. But there's always room for growth. And that's, to me, very important.
Awesome. Awesome. So not only are you sitting in a powerful seat, but you are truly a powerful woman in more ways than one. And so I'd love to dig into this conversation. As you know, as I shared before, the purpose of this is really to help support us into really just stepping into our identity, stepping into our power, embracing it more. At the time of this recording, more and more women are moving into the C-suite, or more and more women are expressing desire, and a pathway is being created for them to do so. But we also know that, sometimes we don't always stay there. or we don't always feel like we belong there, for more reasons than one. And as things are shifting in our society, we're seeing that, you know, there's a door being open for more and more women to not only just, you know, own their leadership identity, but to really be in powerful positions, whether that be in corporate, whether that be in government, every sector, you name it. Also, with the transition of our economy over these next few years, women are getting access to more and more capital where we haven't had it before. So it's really this period of transition in society. And I wanted to leverage this time to really start to talk about, okay, well, yes, it'd be one thing when we start to get into the positions. It's another thing when we get the money, but how do we prepare mentally? How do we ensure that we are, when we get into those positions or when we have that level of access or influence, that we're able to do the work that we're supposed to? So with that, I shared with you the 3 words that we've been defining, and everyone has their own definition. So again, there's no right or wrong here, but I'm curious, you know, when you hear the word power, how do you define that? And what has been your experience with power?
Sure, absolutely. And we shared that earlier. The math person in me had to come out. And so I'm going to switch it up a little bit because when I think about power, I believe it's a combination of authority and influence.
Mm.
I think it's both. I feel like you really need to have both to be considered someone in a sense of power. And when I say that, when I think of authority, I'm thinking of someone based on their power, their position, their title, their knowledge, their expertise, and how people view that. And when I think of influence, you don't necessarily need a position or title, but it's how you communicate with others, how the message, the energy, how you make people feel. And for me, you need both of those to be powerful because you could be someone in a position of authority with a title, but it doesn't mean you necessarily have influence. And so without that, you can't be powerful. But at the same token, I've seen people, even people early in their career, you know, they have a sense of influence. It's like when they get that the position, the title, and the knowledge and expertise, you just know they're going to knock it out the park.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it as a math equation, and that you have, for me, have to have both to be considered powerful. It's not one or the other; it's both.
Okay. Well, with that, and thank you for sharing that, would you say that you're, according to your belief and your understanding, that power is externally sourced or internal?
Ooh, that's a good question. I believe it's internal.
Okay.
I really believe it's internal, and I say that again when I think about influence and what that means. That starts within. It really starts within. And again, how you communicate with others, how do you interact with others, how you make people feel, how you communicate as well. So I truly believe it's internal
Mm-hmm.
and it bleeds out and goes external.
Mm.
Because we've seen people that when we see them, they're like, wow, like they wow the room, they carry the room with them, they just take the air out of air out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is that influence. And so I know it starts from my perspective internally.
Okay, awesome. And so I in my research around power dynamics and specifically around human development, I've uncovered that, you know, there are 2 phases in our lives where we are first introduced or start to experiment with power. And that's right when we're about 2 or so, when we're talking, and our favorite word, as you know, with 2 young ones yourself, right? The favorite word is no, right? Like every 2-year-old, like that's the only word in their vocabulary. And that is a time in our development because we've heard no so many times from our parents, well-meaning parents at that point, that becomes a word of where we say, no, we don't want to do this, or no, we don't want to eat that, or no, we don't want to wear that. And then you see us experimenting with power again around 13, 12, 13. That's where you're stepping into that teenager, hormones are happening, emotions are happening within you that you don't know how to control. And so the no and the commanding your space and everything else and expressing your emotions is when it shows up. But also, depending on how your caretakers or your parents react to you experimenting with your power, that has the power, to use the word again, to either cause you to stifle and really, I guess, surrender your power, or if it's encouraged, if you're encouraged to speak up, if you're encouraged to share your emotions, then it allows you to embrace your power a lot more. And so we all have our own lived experiences on how power was received or not received in those earlier in those earlier experiences that then allow us to project it when we become older. So I'm curious for you, when you think about your earlier experiences with power, maybe not 2 years old, but just in general in your adolescence, was power something that was embraced, encouraged, or did you feel like it was something that you had to make small in some cases?
For me, I would say it was encouraged. No, being mindful, it's still being a child, I had to be respectful in how it was. Again, my parents are raised in the South. I was raised in a military household. And so no, it wasn't taken lightly. But I would say it was still embraced. And I think for me, what I've seen is, it's interesting you bring that up, and the dynamics I see in sometimes women now, when you can't tell your parents no, you can't say no, and how it carries on now to where we don't tell people no in the workplace, or no is seen as a bad word. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting in that we're telling people you can't tell certain people in authority, meaning your parents, no, and then we get into the workplace and at times have that same issue. So I would say it was embraced. I look at my young kids, as you mentioned, I have a 4 and a 2-year-old. And so there's a level of, you can't say no, because there is a level of respect that is needed as a parent. But it's important for them to understand why we're telling them no. My daughter, she'll say, well, why not? Why can't I do it? What if I don't? And at times it's frustrating when you just want to say, no, you just can't, but taking the time to explain to her why. Mm-hmm. And I think she takes it in a bit better of understanding. And we want her to ask why. We want that curiosity. We want her to ask questions. And same thing with my son as he progresses as well. Because I don't want them to shrink away. Mm-hmm. I don't want that. But again, within parameters of, again, being respectful and things of that nature.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's the key, right? So, for many of us, if we grew up with parents of older generations, right, that was the because I said so, right? Mm-hmm. Or that it was very much command and control, like the kids are seen and not heard, and all these messages that many of us or many of our parents grew up with and then instilled in us. So I love the fact that you are creating a space where you are encouraging curiosity with your daughter and your son, of course, but specifically your daughter, where it's okay to ask questions. Because I think that also links to another area where we as women are often challenged, and that's being okay with just asking, being okay with being inquisitive and getting our needs met, right? I feel like the whole thing is tied into each other in terms of, whether or not your ability to exert your power also was encouraged, and the way that you were allowed to ask, allowed to question, allowed to even challenge. I think, to your point, it is about respect, but there's like that fine line, right? Of like what is a kid's natural curiosity versus disrespect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Awesome.
agree.
So on the authority side, now that I don't know that I knew about the military household before. So on the authority side, I could just imagine that authority showed up very, very distinctly for you. So thinking back, like, do you feel like when it comes to authority, that you had any, resistance in exercising authority yourself based on being in such an authoritative environment?
No, I definitely became one of those rule followers that thought rules were important, they're needed, they're necessary. Now, over time, however, I had to pull back on that rigidity, because it became to the point where I wasn't taking in the human factor and the human element in making decisions from an emotional intelligence standpoint. So I didn't do the rebel, become a rebel on the other side, where it's like, no rules, do whatever I want. Who cares what the world thinks? I've continued down that path. But again, I had to make adjustments because I didn't want to be seen as just this person that didn't have feelings or emotions, because that is important. And I think as we see more women moving up into leadership roles, it's not about people saying, you're emotional. It's emotions are a real thing. We need to accept them and understand them. It's how you manage them, which is important. I tell my daughter, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be upset, but there is a level of management that's needed in that, and how you communicate the emotion as well.
Yeah.
It is very important.
Yeah, I think that's important because I mean, grown adults, I coach people who are well into their adulthood, well into senior leadership spaces, and because they were never given permission to experience certain emotions, right? Because once we label an emotion as bad or an
Yeah.
emotion as good, we naturally want to stay away from the bad emotions. And because they weren't given permission to experience those emotions as full blown adults, they don't know how to tap into those
Mm-hmm.
emotions. And so it's often projected in very toxic or negative ways that,
Yeah.
if only they were given to, like your daughter, if only they were given permission to be mad, that it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be
Yes.
angry. It's okay to be frustrated, right? And it's okay
Yes.
to express those. We'd probably see leadership functioning in a much different way. So I have hope with your daughter for sure. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on around power is really this idea that when we look into our society now, especially in the workplace or any level of society, we see power being demonstrated as power over. And partly
Mm-hmm.
because, mostly there's men in positions of power, and that is their natural way of exerting power or manifesting power. And then when you look at women, our natural way is power with, which is what shows up as influence. So the authority and the influence, while we do need both, we see more of one model in our society. And what I've even had conversation with women about is this fear of, I don't want to have power. I don't want to have power because to me, in my mind, power means power over people, and I don't want to do that. But I'm also trying to change that narrative to say power exists in other forms, and the form that is natural to us is influence, and we can tap into that. So I'm curious of your thoughts, in terms of your experiences and even people that you've managed and led, and how you've been able to navigate defining what power looks like for you and how you exercise it, and then also mentoring and showing other women how to exercise their natural power.
I love that you said you're trying to change the narrative on the word.
Mm-hmm.
And right, you can take that word and it can mean different things to different people. And when people ask me my leadership style, I use the word empower.
Mm-hmm.
I don't run away from it. I don't shy from it. I don't, run from it. And when I think about it, I think about it in a way I empower people. That's how I want people to work with me. I want people to feel empowered because I want them to have a sense of autonomy, and I want to support them in making decisions. It's not about me telling you what to do or how to do it. It's something needs to be done. And I'm going to make sure you have the support, the resources, for the financial, time, personnel to make the decisions and get it done. I want employees to feel empowered because I want them to contribute their ideas, their talents, their thoughts, their perspectives. I am not the smartest person in the room. I don't have all the answers. I have blind spots like everyone. But when you give that sense of empowerment and you're bringing those people into a room, they are powerful. There's collaboration and there's teamwork. And so when I mentor, young people, especially women, from the perspective of power, it's not a bad thing. It's how you use it. It's really about how you use it. And you're right, men a lot of times use it as a form of domination, powering over someone, and say, I use it as something positive, like you said, as a source of influence. Because I want to make sure your light is shining bright. And I'm going to make sure, again, you have the support and the resources to do that. And because I see there's a sense of light. I mean, a light needs energy. It needs power to operate. I don't want to have a dull light, and I don't want you to have a dull light either. So let's get it in here, get it in what you need to, again, have that light shining bright and be powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so, obviously you've found your power, right? And you've identified how to tap into it. I'm curious, what do you do to maintain it, right? Because as you know, it's a source, right? Like and we need to plug in just like we plug in the phone. So what are some practices that you've created for yourself to help you stay grounded in that power when life starts lifing and you don't feel powerful all the time?
It's definitely, my personal board of directors, my support system, depending on what I'm dealing with. I have self-doubts at times. I am human. There's times I feel like, man, I didn't make the right decision. I could have handled something differently. And that board of directors and my mentors and sponsors and coaches, they're the ones that help me.
Mm.
And without them, I don't believe I could be as powerful as I am. There's times when, again, I've doubted myself, and it's like, how dare you, Jessica? No, you're smart. You're educated. You're able to communicate. You know how to walk into a room and lead. You can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't doubt yourself. And I can feel that. I can feel that power coming in me when just in hearing them speak to me, and the words of encouragement and support, and my cheerleaders are around me. So I would have to say that support network is how I keep that light going.
I love it. And do you have like a regular practice or routine or anything like that that you do on a regular basis just for you to fuel you?
I love words of affirmation and motivation. And so I have it on pens, I have it on notebooks, I have it on t-shirts. I have some around the wall here in my office. So depending on what I'm doing, I can always look up and see something that gives me that sense of, I got this. I'm going to get through it. I'm okay. I'm ready for it. I'm meant for it. So I have a lot of motivational items around my home, or that I wear to give me that inspiration each and every day.
Awesome. Awesome. We've had a variety of responses here between people having a morning routine or meditating, journaling, praying, whatever the case may be. But I think the consistent theme here is that everyone recognizes that this is a ongoing thing, right?
Yes.
Like you don't discover like, oh, I'm powerful, and then you're good for years on end, because
No.
life will challenge that the minute you come to that realization. So I
Yes.
love that you've intentionally created an environment that reminds you, if you will, or that fuels you to remember who you are and the power that you possess. And so as we think about next generation, obviously you're doing a fantastic job with your daughter. I know that you also mentor people, and obviously you have people who report into you, and the entire organization that you support is all about preparing the next generation of female leaders, really, in many ways. And so I'm curious, as we're thinking about breaking down what power is and helping more and more women and young girls to embrace their power, what are some thoughts that you have in terms of things that we can begin to do now outside of having these conversations to really help equip and start to build that confidence within these young girls, so that when they do get into their positions of power or authority in organizations or in society as a whole, they're doing it with this knowledge and this understanding and this awareness of their power, their authority, and their ability to affect change through influence?
Absolutely. There are several ways to do it. And I appreciate you mentioning Girl Scouts and what our mission and what we're about. We're building girls of courage, confidence, and character. That is our goal, and that is our mission. Um, it starts, I would say, just within your network. And when I mean network, it could be if you're leading a Girl Scout troop, it could be young girls that go to your church or your daughter's school or son's school, and having the conversations and connecting with them and sharing your stories in your journeys. I think that's important because you don't want to come off like you're preaching, but you want to be able to say, this is what I experienced, and these are the lessons that I've learned. Or when you see a young girl going through a certain situation or encountering a challenge, being there, supporting her and guiding her. It's those connections and that closeness that to me is important, that helps that next generation. You don't want to, again, shy away from the word power, or other words. Again, even authority, it's not a bad word. It's okay. It is part of our society. It's something that's needed. But helping young girls understand what it is and how they define it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to have someone else's definition of influence or power or even authority. It's letting them define it for themselves. And again, it gets back to the word for me, empower. When you do that, you're empowering young girls.
Yeah, I love that. And that's essentially what the goal of the series is, to help empower other women. Actually, I would probably put a spin to that my goal was not necessarily to empower women to step into their power, but to show women that they are already
Mm.
powerful, right? That it is a, I don't know. And maybe this is going off on a tangent. I have used the word empower, and I feel like the word empowerment is used as it relates to women quite a bit, right? Like this
Mm.
is how we're gaining our strength. But we both share the same definition around power being sourced internally. So I'm wondering, like, if the next evolution of empowerment is to just be powerful in the sense that, you
Mm.
know, the empowerment is a given, right? We've moved past the place where we empower people, but now it's like empowerment is a given. Now how do you exercise it? Now how do you stand boldly, without obviously going too much to the left, but that's my tangent. So one of the other things that I was going to ask with regards to specifically, you know, women who are looking to move up the ladder, right? Like we've heard the statistics. We know the top 500, there's about 53. We know that there, in record history, there are more women in the C-suite now than there have ever been. And actually, we're seeing that not only are there more women in the C-suite, but there's more succession happening, so that when a woman
Mm.
does leave in the C-suite, before it used to be like, you know, you needed two people, like the runway between when a woman left a C-suite
Mm.
position to be able to backfill it was significant. Now we're starting to see that gap close, so that when CEOs or C-suite women are leaving, there's another one
Mm.
waiting in the wing. So I'm excited to see that. I'm curious, for you who have made it there, what advice could you give to those who, if that is their aspiration, to help kind of close that gap in terms of how long they have to wait for runway to be able to step into a C-suite role?
What's important, we've talked about it before, and I know there's a lot of work, research out there and discussion around, you know, mentorship and coaching and all of that. But to really move up is sponsorship, which means you need allies.
Mm-hmm.
You need those folks that are willing to use their professional and social capital to present you with opportunities to speak your name in rooms when you're not there. That is how you move up. Without someone willing to put their social and professional capital on the line, you could be the greatest worker in the world, have much influence, but without them, it is almost impossible. And so, yes, is mentorship important? Absolutely. Having a coach is important. I've had an executive coach myself, but the key game changer was having sponsors. And it's not something that you can just go ask someone, can you be my sponsor? There's work that you have to do ahead of time and showing that you bring value. You have foresight. There's someone that has a great work ethic. And then having someone notice that and building that connection and relationship with someone. So if you want to get into those top levels of any organization, of any sector, you got to have the sponsors to get there.
Yeah, that is so true. And I feel like that's the shift that we're moving away from, especially as it relates to women's leadership development programming, because it was always about mentorship. It was always
Yes.
about, you know, gaining exposure through stretch projects and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But the real door opener, to your point, has always been sponsorship. That's how Bob has been able
Yes.
to advance at the rate that he has all these decades. And so I'm happy to hear you reiterate that. And I see that trend happening more, especially in the last few years, where more men
Mm.
are realizing that, you know what, we need to open more doors for women. And so the funny thing is, still, and that, I think part of it is just because it's numerical, because there aren't enough of us, enough women in the C-suite to be able to do it. But most of the women that I've spoken to, or a lot of the women, I should say, their sponsorship came from men. And so I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
a key thing to say here, that your sponsor or sponsors won't always be people who look like you. They won't always be
Yes.
women, that it's okay to engage men who are already sitting in that seat to be your sponsors as well.
Because right, there are allies out there. I've had white men, I've had black men, I've had white women, other BIPOC men and women as well that have helped me and been sponsors for me. So they may not always look like me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay because we know we have allies out there.
Yeah.
They want to help. They know the importance and the value of that diversity of thought, and having those very different voices and perspectives in the room are important, and they're willing to help. They truly are.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point earlier, it's sponsorship is not an ask, right? That is earned.
Yes,
And that is
absolutely.
earned through many different things that you have control over. That's the
Yes.
beautiful part of that. So hopefully that serves as encouragement to those of you who are listening that, the doors, how can I put this? The pathway is widening for us to
Mm.
move into that, but we have to have that confidence. And it doesn't mean that we are confident 100% of the time, but it means that we are confident within ourselves to know that we are powerful, that we have access to powerful, how we show up is powerful. Our essence is influencing others, whether we are paying attention to it or not. And so it's a combination of who we're being in addition to what we're doing that's really going to help us step into these new
Mm.
places, that's going to help us make the impact, create the generational changes that we want to see in our society. So thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing. Before I let you leave, though, we got to do this blitz session. I know you shared, and it was over a year ago, so my memory isn't, I can't remember. So I'm going to ask you again, as you think about, everything that you've experienced at this stage in your life, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give her a key piece of advice, what might that be?
It would be, again, your job is important. Being, again, giving that whatever 100, I can't say 110% every day, because sometimes we can't give 110%. And bringing value to any organization you work for is important, but don't let that be the end all. It is so important to make sure you are dedicating time and committing time to building your personal and professional brand.
Yeah.
That is what has opened doors for me. The time and energy that I put into my brand on LinkedIn, because I want to tell my narrative. I want to tell my story. I don't want anybody else doing that. I think I do a pretty good job doing it myself. And so it's something I wish I had started earlier on in my career, of not just head down working, but putting that time back into me. Because the time I put back into me, there's a return on investment on it. And even if I think we talked before, we started here, I'm planting seeds. I'm putting seeds out here and I'm watching them slowly grow. I just wish I had started planting some of them a bit sooner. So make sure you put your time into that and working on building your brand and maintaining your brand and telling your story.
Yeah, I love that. And even more powerful, the fact that you said you wanted to tell the narrative, because we're all there's a brand, right? Whether
Yes.
we're aware of it or not, but the fact that you're being intentional about what that brand narrative is, and how it shows
Yes.
up. I love that. And as we think ahead, right, the work that you're doing, the seeds that you're planting for the future, 60, 70, 80, however many years from now, when you're looking back, what do you want the narrative to be about your life?
First, I have to start with family. I have to start with the legacy that I want to leave for my family, the generational wealth, that I want to be seen as a loving wife and mother. That has to be where I start. But after that, I would say I want to be seen as someone who is not just an advocate speaking for change, but someone that supported important causes, whether it's through time, whether it's financially, to say I did my part in doing my best to make the world a better place. I think I have that view because I can have children. My children may have children, and I want them to have a great life, and live in a world as best as possible, free of many of the things that we're dealing with now. And so I want to be able to say in my narrative, I would play a role in some of that change.
Love that. Love that. And then lastly, books, because leaders are readers. So I know last time this one I remember, you shared a book by your coach
Mm-hmm.
as the one of the most powerful books. So has there been any other books that have come up for you or that you can think of that have been instrumental in your development?
I would say a book that was shared with me when I became a manager, was promoted to manager at the Grant Thornton accounting firm, Marshall Goldsmith, "What got you here won't get you there."
Mm.
And I shared that book with anyone transitioning to that manager role. So people I want to move up and, I want to get the manager title and be in charge and all of that. They need to understand it's a seismic shift when it goes from being that individual contributor to someone that is managing people,
Mm-hmm.
and what that means. And Marshall does a great job in that book explaining, yes, you've been successful here, but there's changes you need to make to be even more successful as someone leading people.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I talk about that in my book too, that it's an identity shift. It is
Yes.
literally an identity shift, not just a title or a pay bump or anything like that, that you're shifting in
Yes.
identities. So I love that you shared that. We will include that in the show notes. What got you here won't get you there. And I feel like that is applicable to at different stages of life,
Yes.
that it is something that you can always reference back, regardless of whether or not you're in traditional corporate environment or you're running your own business, or you are in community work. So thank you for those. Now, as far as, people getting in touch with you, if they want to connect, if they want to learn more about your work, if they want to support Girl Scouts, what's the best way to get in touch?
LinkedIn, it's where I spend a lot of my time. So it's Jessica E. McClain, and I have an alphabet of soup of letters behind my last name and my amazing Girl Scout uniform. That's the best way to connect with me. Going to find me.
Awesome. And I will definitely include those in the show notes as well. Jessica, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the amazing work that you do. And you mentioned before that a lot of the work that you do is behind the scenes, but the truth is, like, you are very much in the forefront. And so, thank you for the work that you're doing. I know that the impact of your presence, being a CFO, being a woman of color as a CFO in such a powerful organization, is influencing, is having an impact on people, whether they ever say it to you or not. I'm saying it to you right now. So thank you so much for being you, and for being that role model for so many of us.
I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. So with that, we will be back next week with another female powerhouse. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk soon.